Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pleasant and Purposeful Torah, live with Rabbi Pinchas Levin in Wisconsin. I so enjoy every class I get with him. To me, it's always fun, and more than fun, knowledgeable, but most of all, it's always pleasant and purposeful with what he teaches us, and that, to me, just gives me things to act upon in this world, and I enjoy it. And today he's got a hot topic, cancel culture. He's going to share some hot stuff. Now, I know the Hebrew people just finished a fast. Let's see how Rabbi Levin's doing today. Rabbi, how you doing today? It's always a joy to be with you. You got the mic, sir.
Oh, hi, Dan. I'm doing well. Thank God. I'm actually quite wiped out. I didn't yet break my fast. Another hour and a half. It's one of the hardest fasts. It's actually in Scripture, in Zechariah, this fast. And it's a time period. We're starting now the 3 weeks between today and another 3 weeks from now is a time of mourning, of introspection, of change. So I'm with you with the jubilance. I'm also happy to see you and to say the lessons. But there is something we should recognize. This is a time of destruction in the Jewish people throughout our history, and it's a time that we need to really reflect on our lives. So today's lesson is this concept. We're going to try to relate to what's going on in the world today of culture cancel. How's it go? Cancel culture. where there's so much anger and hatred and destruction going on. And, I'm like an empath. That is, you could just feel. And I'm trying to get it, like, what is wrong with everybody? Why are you so angry about? Life is good. I mean, go back in history. Times were rough. We're in a wonderful country. What's so terrible? But there's so much anger, and I'm trying to connect to it and feel with it. And I'm going to share with you what I think I got, because when I actually started to feel it, the pain that's in the African-American community, with the Black Lives Matter is a hate organization. And I'm not condoning it, but I understand where it's coming from, their hatred. And when I actually felt it, I almost passed out from the pain. There's so much pain in the African-American community, and I think that the white people are just not getting it at all. They're just not getting it, and the pain is coming out with a terrible result. So I feel, bear with me to the end of the lesson. We don't just hit things right over the head. We're going to try to develop the theme.
Oh, you're so compassionate, Rabbi.
It is very painful. So we're going to try to develop it and slowly get into it. I was just thinking today, we should start on a lighter note. I got everyone all depressed already. Where's your smile? I was thinking today, just imagine the Jewish people would have such a reaction of cancel culture. Anyone who's hated and oppressed the Jewish people, we're going to destroy that culture. How much of history of the world do you think will be left if we cancel the culture of everybody who hated the Jewish people? How much of the world history would be left? Not too much. I think we need to appreciate being in America. I think we'd be left with American history. America is the first country, to my knowledge, that have been totally, there is anti-Semitism, but as a country, Jews are fine here. We have all the rights. We can practice our religion, no restraints. It's quite incredible, although you'll have places with clearly anti-Semitic, even leaders making rules that are anti-Semitic. But in general, in America, we're free. It's an absolutely wonderful thing, and that's how we grew up. But otherwise, if we would do cancel culture from Jews, forget history. But so where does it come from? What does it mean, cancel culture? And this is especially a good lesson for Noachites. You know why?
Why?
What you tell me? What do Noachites have to do with cancel culture? Well, let me tell you two reasons. First of all, the first time in history that there was cancel culture, it was done by the Almighty, and it was with the flood. God made a huge cancel culture. There were 10 generations of mankind in the world, and God said, no more, we're going to start fresh, start a new world order, cancel everything until now, and things changed. But this is the point I want to slowly develop and bring out. when we do cancel the past, do we now just talk about Noachites? Well, kind of, the Noachite movement. That's what Noachite movement means. We're all Noachites, all of us. We all come from Noach. This is the new culture of the world that happened after the flood. Do we ignore the 10 generations before the flood? Absolutely not. It's so core Judaism. I invite everyone to please listen to a wonderful lesson we had explaining these 10 generations, life lessons from the 10 generations, from Adam till Noach, how to develop loving kindness to mankind. That happened. That's part of our history. So even though there was a total changeover, but we don't ignore, we don't look down at, we don't destroy the past. We had to get rid of it. God did make a flood. But we still take with the positive from the past. That's the point I want to bring out. And every Noachite, I think, the mainstream Noachites are ex-Christians, right? Am I right?
Oh, yeah.
So Noachites have all going through this process of cancel culture. They all have this whole way of life that you're used to. And now you're coming to the synagogue and you're starting a whole new life, not what you're used to. So you have to go through this cancel culture. Now, when you do that, this is a very common problem with Noachites. You'll look at the Christians, that they're all bad and evil and they're terrible. They're looking at you like you're possessed and you're full of hate to them that they're possessed. And we have these terrible fighting going on. It could get really, really bad. But if you would understand how cancel culture really works, is it's time to move on to a higher level, and you don't destroy what you had before. You take out the good from it. You learn from the bad, and you take the good. God put you there for a reason. God created the world with Adam for a reason. We don't just say destroy it and forget about it. No, change, learn from the good and from the bad, not to make those mistakes again, become a greater person. And that's what Noachites should do to Christianity. I strongly recommend. I have a whole lesson series. I said today, by the way, my 39.
I saw that. Number 39.
39, maybe the final one. Number 39. The Jewish-Christian conflict resolution to understand from Christianity. Don't just say it's all a bunch of baloney, it's nothing. But I want to tell you why. This is really a preface to today's whole lesson. Is you look in the world today, there's so much going on. With this virus, the pandemic, and the hatred, and the cancel culture, and in politics. There's so much emotion going on. And there's a big difference between how we're supposed to be looking at it and the way the world is looking at it. Most of us are affected by Christianity, and we look at the evils in the world as it's the China virus, as if it comes from China, or Lucifer made it. Or that's just part of life. And we don't recognize that God runs this world. He created evil. Every single thing that happens in life is in the context of loving kindness from our Father in heaven. And we need to understand that. Now, we're in this world to know God, to get close to him. How do you get to know somebody? How do you know somebody? How do we know God? In Christianity, God is like this Father. He's beyond us. We need a son to come here to get to know him. But that's not what God tells us in Scripture. He says, Haskel v'yadaya, you say, I want you to know me. How are we supposed to know God? Doesn't that seem like he's way out there? No way for me to know him. My friends, there's 3 ways that God tells us that we can know him. The first and foremost, the primary way, this is written, by the way, in Kuzari, if you want to take a look. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi writes this. There's 3 ways to know God. Number 1, which is the most important, is through Torah study. God revealed of himself to the world at Sinai, and every single human being has a portion in Torah, even a non-Jew, even a Noachite. You study your portion in Torah, and you are at the highest level human being that could exist. You are now close, one with God, through that knowledge of God, through studying Torah. That's the primary way. However, there's 2 other ways to know God. Do you know what they are? One of them is looking at the world. Look, this it says in the book of Job, sorry, I could see from my flesh. Our forefather Abraham, that's how he knew God so well from life. He looked at nature, look at the world. You'll see God everywhere. We had a lesson once, if you remember, about the monarch butterfly. You could see, look in nature. Everything in the world is telling you about God. God created the world as an expression of himself, and we can learn about God from looking at nature. It's so important this time, especially. Take time, see the ducks. See, we just saw 4 rabbits outside playing now. It's so amazing. Yeah, you have to connect to nature. Each person according to your needs, as you showed me in that article. Every person should connect to nature according to who you are. That's a way to know God. There's a third way, and this way is so not done. And this is why we can't rip out the history books, because God revealed himself to the world in history.
Oh, man.
How do you like that? Study
Huge.
history. See what happened, and you will see God every step of the way. You'll learn about him because he ran these things. It wasn't he did it, they did it, he's a bad person. Let's stop that whole rhetoric. That's not the way we speak. There's no he's a bad person. We're all bad people. We're all good people. We have good and bad. People make bad choices. How bad it is, God decides. That's not our way of speaking. God created this world. He revealed himself to the world in Torah, in nature, and in history. Now, when we're looking at history around us, things are happening. It's God speaking to us. I've had many lessons about the virus. We're not doing the virus tonight. We spoke about politics too. Maybe we'll get to politics. Would that be fine? You want politics? Maybe we'll get to some politics. But really, we're talking about the hatred going on, which has affected politics. Both the virus and the hatred are in politics. I view the politics like a married couple. Wouldn't you know it? Everything's a married couple. That's what happens when you're divorced. You want to be a married couple. So I see politics, it's a married couple, and the problem is communication. There's no communication. There's only everyone saying what they hold and insulting the other one, and they're just not connecting. They're not getting each other, not hearing even what the other one says. That's the serious problem. They sit down together and actually hear what each other say.
They'd rather be right than together.
For sure. So what happened here, if you remember our lesson last week, we talked about black Noahites. So what came out from the lesson? I was trying to say practically that what we need to do is recognize the African Americans for who they are. Everybody is going to feel invalidated. They're going to feel lowly if they're not recognized for, you don't even know who I am. You don't appreciate who I am. You don't admire me. You don't emulate me. You don't think of me of anything special. That's what we spoke about last week. That was our job. Well, I don't just speak, I actually did that. The whole week I've been working very hard on trying to recognize and appreciate and understand African Americans. I've asked many people. I took a poll on Facebook. I want to share with you the results of my poll. First thing, let me put the record straight. Before we started, as I said last week, until recently, I worked all the years, as Martin Luther King told us, and as I learned from Star Trek, and then this is what we worked on, as we spoke about, there is no difference. It's just a freaking color. It's pigment. It doesn't matter. We're all human beings. I get it. I'm there. But what I'm hearing from the world, please don't start telling me how. I'm hearing from the world is there is black life. There's such a thing as anyone who says about the black people, that's racist. There is such a race called the black people. I didn't know that. I accepted that a few weeks ago, and I've been working on trying to understand this. So last week was appreciating this race of the black people, and I worked on it. So what I did first is I posted on Facebook for everyone, all the negativity in the world, everyone, let's do an exercise in positivity. It was a great post. A lot of really good...
Wonderful, yeah.
Had a lot of good responses. Let's post something positive about any race. The reason why I did it primarily is I wanted to hear some positive things about the black race, because I personally don't know too much. I want to hear what do people have to say about the black race. So there were a lot of responses there about the Irish and the Italians and the Jews and all different races, but there wasn't too much about the black race. So what could I do? I had to start another post the next day I made another post on Facebook, and I spoke it out. Could you please share with me something positive about the black race? And over here, I took down the post. And I want to tell you about the response. It really blew my mind. There were 4 responses. A lot of people responded. In the beginning, it was like slow. People started saying some nice things about individuals. And I asked, individuals, I know there's individuals everywhere, but what about the race? And they said, well, from the individual, we see about the race. And people started saying some nice things about a few African Americans. But then I got 3 other responses, which really set me on my mission. One response, which I was hoping for, was total excitement, joy. Thank you, Rabbi, for speaking about this, because nobody's talking about that. All we talk about is African Americans are the same, they're equal. Let's let them also come to the college. You can also come to our white schools. No white privilege, will be equal. What's it called when they give you the jobs?
Affirmative action.
Affirmative action. We don't want them to feel less than. But nobody's really recognizing any greatness in the African American community. And so I think the person who said this was African American, actually, how thankful they were for this post. Wow, wonderful. But then there was 2 categories of negativity. One were people who were like me until this realization, and they said, Rabbi, what are you talking about? What does it mean, the black race? Which black race? It's just a pigment. There's no black race. We're all the same, and some so much so that anyone who wrote something positive about the African Americans, this person wrote on it, one person wrote on it. That has nothing to do with black. Nothing to do with black. It's really interesting. On yesterday's post, when I spoke about other races, so people said about Irish and Italian and Jewish, you could have said also, but other nations have that. But there's still something positive in this race. But we couldn't take it. There's no such thing, black. And I even had, the reason why I took it down is I had some really negative feedback. Rabbi, how could you make such a post? It's derisive. You're suggesting that there's differences between white and black. And by doing that, this is our day and age, I'm being a racist. I'm trying to see good. Let's see something positive. And I'm being called a racist. I took it down, and I went through a lot of introspection. And I highly recommend for everybody to, if you haven't seen it yet, you should see the movie or read the book, Roots. Just the whole thing is amazing to understand what happened with African Americans. But just the first episode. The first episode, I watched it a couple times for it to sink in. And I started to feel the pain and the anger and the hatred that the African American community are feeling. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why, if you learn Isaiah 53 about the suffering servant, why is it the Jewish people need to suffer, or the Messiah needs to suffer? What is the suffering for? One of the primary reasons for suffering is for us to relate to others, for us to understand their pain and help them out of it. When I've been there, done that, I could help you get through it. I remember when I had cancer, that was the only guy who made any difference when they visited me. It was someone who's been there. He had cancer. He talks to me. Okay, at least you're talking. Other people have no idea what they're talking about. So that's one of the main reasons for the suffering. Jewish people need to suffer to relate to others. So I want to share with you something, again, very personal. But I think, personally, I get the African American people. And I'll tell you why. I went through nothing near what they did. And, with all the Jewish persecution through all the centuries, I never would have said this until this week. I think if you put it on a scale with what African Americans are feeling, theirs is even worse. Well, how could it be? I mean, if you look at the Holocaust, you look at the Spanish Inquisition, how could anything be worse than that? I'm going to tell you how something is actually much, much worse much deeper. And if we would just feel this, we would also scream, and this world will change amazingly. We're gonna bring the salvation tonight. This is it. If we could just tap into the pain, and I'll tell you what it is. I'll give you first with a life experience. I was married. I come from a modern Orthodox background, but my father, what's called Baal Tshuva, which means he was born in a secular home. My father came from a secular home in Philadelphia, and our way of practicing Judaism, he didn't have any tradition from his father, his father's father. He didn't have that. As you know, if anyone ever watched The Fiddler on the Roof, tradition's a big deal. And my family didn't really have that tradition because my father came from a secular home and became a rabbi, but which traditions to do? He took from here, took from there, didn't really have. Well, when I went to Israel, I became extremely ultra-religious and very successful. I married into a very prestigious family. Prestigious, a big Rosh Hashiva. It's like the highest level of prestige in ultra-religious Judaism. Famous, wealthy, like everything you could ask for was in this family. And I suffered being part of this family. I was the black sheep of the family. I don't mean any criticism to African Americans. That which most sheep are white is they're not racist. It's an expression. Most sheep are white and there's a black sheep. It's an expression. I was the black sheep, meaning the whole family were this prestigious family that each one had their tradition, to unbelievable detailed tradition. And I was this guy who didn't have, and I felt it. You can cut it with a knife, and this was a major part of the problem in my marriage. I was married 23 years. It was always an issue how whatever I would do, but it's not the right way to do it. You're not doing it according to our tradition because you just don't have. And that pain, it really hurts to feel I'm a less than, not because of anything about me. It's because I come from nothing. And I want the American people, white America, should recognize it. It's so important for somebody who's suffering in pain, for people to understand what the pain is. Should I tell you what, it could be they don't even know themselves, they don't express it themselves. But the root of the pain of the African Americans, you'll get in roots. The root of their pain it's just so hard to say it. I was in Mir Yeshiva once. I have to go on another tangent. It's too difficult to say it. Another tangent. I was in Mir Yeshiva where I was studied many, many years. I was privileged to know one of the greatest Torah scholars of our generation. His name was Rav Shlomo Wolbe. I spoke to him many times. I've seen him hundreds of times. I heard lessons from him dozens of times. He spoke every other week in the yeshiva. One time, in one of his lessons, they call it a shmooze, he said words of encouragement, words of chastisement. One time he was speaking about the Holocaust. He was a Holocaust survivor. And he said, people think that the Nazis, the head of them, we don't say his name, Hitler, Yamach Shemai, how many Jews did he kill? And everyone said 6 million. He said, oh no, we don't get it. The Nazis killed the entire Jewish people. The entire culture, the entire civilization that was in Europe was totally wiped out. Here he was in Israel or in America, and whatever Judaism we're seeing now, it's something else. It's not what was. It's not that. There was a cancel culture. The entire Judaism that was in Europe was canceled.
The rich depth.
You could still see the what's it called?
Remnants.
Yeah, I mean an old episode of a show, the reruns. You could watch the reruns, but the show is off. That whole that whole existence of European Jewry is dead. He made that point, and at the time I was in my 20s, and I didn't really appreciate what he's saying until now. He wasn't trying to say how terrible, look, the Germans, so terrible, they didn't just kill 6 million, they killed everything. He wasn't just trying to build up how terrible they are. That's not the Jewish way, that wasn't his point. His point was the recognition that what we have now, we're missing an entire chunk of history. And whatever we have, we can't equate ourselves with them. In Judaism, I know in the secular world it's not like this. In the secular world, every generation thinks that they're a much higher level. We have so much more knowledge today than they ever had before. In Judaism, it's actually the opposite. We look back at earlier generations with awe. Wow, they were at a much higher level of knowledge, of understanding, much deeper than we have today. And that was really the point. Whatever was back then, we're different now. We have to look at them. That was said by someone from the pre-Holocaust era. It's a different level. And we're starting fresh now. We have to understand the bad there was a lot of bad in the Jewish people then, but see the good in it. That recognition. Okay, you ready? This is the 3 weeks. This is the pain that's going on. The pain that's going on in African Americans. You just watch the first, if you could watch that first episode of Roots and you don't cry, there's something wrong with you. African Americans, it's not like the world are saying today. World are saying today is just color. It's not just color. It's not just pigment. They had a culture. They were a people. I saw today there was a gathering. The president gathered all Latinos together, the Mexican, the Spanish community, to try to elevate them, and they all speak with such a pride. We have our culture, our language, our existence. We're our people. There's something that binds us together. Do you know what America did to African Americans? We didn't just enslave them. We didn't just kill many of them. We totally obliterated their entire culture, destroyed it. Look at this sweet family. What's his name? Kanta Kinta. How he's with how he was born, how they named him, when he had his circumcision, when he became a warrior. And they had and that was just one little village. And you see on the boat, they had all different languages. So the idiot Americans were torturing them. They thought they were just talking some monkey language. It wasn't real language. But in the movie, I'm sure it was 1,000 times more than this. It was a civilization. They had culture. They had language. They had customs. They had ways about them. They had beauty to their existence that they were proud of, and all that was completely obliterated, and none of us care. We say they're just like us, but they have different pigment. But when it comes to us, we're the same. However, I'm Jewish, you're Italian, you're Spanish, and you're American, African American, which means you have no identity other than pigment. You're just a blank with pigment. Do you know how derisive that is? We're not even connecting to the source of their pain. We're not even acknowledging what we've destroyed. We say what we did was wrong, that we treated them bad, we hurt them, we killed them, we tortured them, but we're not recognizing, and you see this is by the most wonderful people today, people that say, I support Black Lives Matter. They don't realize it's a total hate group, anti-Semitism. You'll have Jews for Black Lives Matter. It's unbelievable. They hate Jews, but their hatred is not coming from the Jews. Their hatred is coming because nobody cares. It doesn't matter. Their life doesn't matter. What does it mean, their life? Of course, we'll give them the same rights, the same privileges, go to the same schools, we'll give you the same jobs, we'll give you the same respect. It still means nothing. I ask you again, in a marriage, imagine you marry somebody and you show the most respect, everything, total dignity. I'll show you the same respect I would if you'd be the Queen of England. I don't even know your name exactly. What's your name? I don't know anything about you. Not interested. But I'm going to show you so much respect. Oh, yes. I'm going to, chivalry, open the door for you. I'm not interested in anything about you. I don't know where you're from. I don't know where you're going to. I don't care. I know that you're different than me. I'm a man, you're a woman. We're different. And I respect you. How do I respect you? By doing things for you. But I don't know you at all. I don't care. Do you think that marriage is going to work? No. You can't have any relationship. If that person, I feel bad for that woman. She's going to get all this money and gifts and respect. But at the end of the day, that's the biggest denigration. You don't even know who I am. You don't even know my name. You don't know anything about me. And Africans Americans are screaming today, Black life. And I put this post, and the most beautiful people responded, what are you talking about? Why are you making derisive remarks? They're just like us, but they're Black, that's all. They don't have any culture. They don't have any existence other than American with dark pigment. That, my friends, is the source of the anger and the hatred. And it's the most derisive thing that we could say. We don't even realize it. People are beautiful. They don't even know it. You didn't know this, right? You didn't even know that we're doing this to them. And it's because it really comes from the African Americans. I'm reaching out to you. I think we should have in our history, but don't get rid of the history of slavery. We need to read it, study it, see good, see the bad, see the ugly. But we should also have chapters in history about African culture. We should understand where they're coming from, and I'll tell you why. The definition of a person is not just you as an individual. That's what we're missing. A person is defined not only because you, but like many people wrote on the post, well, this African American did great things. I know that. There's a lot of great individuals. I'm talking about the race, the Black race. I know there's no one Black race, like there's no one white race. And we don't even know the names of the different races of Black. So one woman wrote a specific race. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm just opening up the book. This is what we need to do. First of all, we need to feel the pain. If we don't even know the pain, we're just treating the cancer as if it's a cold, then the person's not going to feel any comfort from when you visit the sick, you say, I hope you feel better. You don't even know what's wrong with me. You want me to feel better. You don't even know the problem. You don't know what could be done about it. My friends, the problem is, and nobody's even talking about this, we have canceled their culture. We have destroyed the identity of Africans from these African Americans. And nobody cares about it. But it's there. And even if they themselves might not know it, not everyone has Alex Healy to take you back to the village that he heard from his grandfather. Not everyone has that, but it's in them. It's in their DNA. A person, you could be away from it for a long time, but you're still from there. And that's what it's not just pigment. We have culture. We're Africans. We have that in us. I want you to know what you've done to me, to rip it away. I want you to recognize there's greatness in that, and to a certain extent, it's still there. I want you to recognize greatness that we have as a people, which many make great posts about different things that African Americans do much better than white Americans. There's a lot there. But we'll never get to even talking about that until we acknowledge and accept. It's not going to help to give money. That's not the point. It's not about the money. It's like you killed my whole family in the gas chambers, so give me money. Then it's all okay. That doesn't do it. I killed your husband, so I'll go get you another one. It doesn't work like you've destroyed my everything. It's not going to help anything you're going to say or do. But what will help is how about a little empathy? How about a little caring? How about even recognizing what you've done? I'm not talking about the slavery. So we gave the rights. They have the exact same rights. We'll put them on a pedestal, more rights. Doesn't solve anything. We need to recognize what has been done, not us. We're not evil. And I'm not even condemning. I get it for this. It's not my place to judge that generation. Not my place. I'm not judging them as evil. We know, all I could say is this. We know now that what they did was wrong and evil. I'm not defining the people as evil people. Not my place. We know now that the way they treated African Americans was cruel and evil. Wrong. That we know. That's not the issue at all. We don't have to destroy monuments and get rid of that. You know what we need to do? That's not going to solve the problem. It won't end. The hatred will not end because the hatred wasn't even acknowledged. We need to recognize what was done. They are suffering because their culture was ripped away from them. That's why they're lashing out. It's always parallel. God is running this world. He's showing us a mirror. They're trying to destroy our culture. Do you know why? Because we destroyed their culture. Can you get it? Isn't it beautiful how God runs the world? He's showing us the problem. It's in front of our eyes. The problem is that we made a culture cancel. Not we personally. There was made to them a cancel of their culture. And they're trying to do the same because nobody's recognizing it.
Rabbi, I don't mean to interject where you're going with this. I want to add, because we're talking about Hashem being in control of everything, there has been some beauty that has come out of this and new culture. I mean, when we think of like Trinidad and Tobago or even Jamaica, these are unique, new, fresh cultures that I just love the islands. I love the feel. I love the food that have become unique cultures and just thrived. And Hashem has permitted that.
Thank you, Dan.
growth.
I'm getting to that. That is exactly where I'm getting to. When we talk about the old culture, I don't mean that African Americans now should start living the way they did in Africa back then. Right. And just like Judaism today should not try to study what was in Europe and try to become those Jews today. We're not them. We are us. And we have to recognize but we are not in a vacuum. We weren't created today. Like Noah wasn't created new. He was after 10 generations. And African Americans today are not in a vacuum Americans with dark pigment. They are after centuries, I don't know how long, thousands of years of living with a developed culture. A whole way of life, a whole civilization, each one in their own place, their own way. I don't know much about it. We should study it, understand it, because it's in them. And part of a person's identity isn't only your own, it's your past and your point, Dan. Your point is so important. It's the present. It's who you have to recognize who you are now. But you can't appreciate who you are now if you don't know the past, if you don't know where you come from. Person could be a wonderful person now, but where are you from? It adds. I heard this once, very beautiful explanation of what's called in Hebrew yichus. It means where are you coming from? What's your lineage? Where's your heritage from? It's like a bunch of zeros. So if you're a nothing, so you could put all the zeros you want next to it, it's still nothing. But if you're a something, if you made yourself into a 1 or a 2 or I don't know, whatever it is, you add on those zeros, it's exponentially greater. And that's what we're taking away. That's the hatred and the anger. We're not giving them all the zeros. All African Americans have lots of zeros behind them. We wiped it out and we don't want to talk about it. We're even insulted to talk about it. We just talk about them now. Pigment. No, my friends. They had a culture that we canceled. We need to recognize the greatness in that, and that is in them. It's part of their DNA. And each individual who develops more is adding a digit in front of all those zeros. He's a greater person. Jamaica might be greater now, but it didn't come in a vacuum. It didn't come out of nowhere. There's a history behind it. And we need to know the history. That's what makes you who you are. It's like you can't just say, now you're a Noahite, so forget about being a Christian. That's no good. You need to remember what you were through in Christianity and take out the positive from it, stay away from that. It makes you a greater person. Now, God runs this world, and there's a reason for this. The reason for everything in this world is it's really so simple. If you would just get it. From the dark comes the light. From the difficulty comes the achievement. When you plant the seed in the ground, it rots, and if the ground is fertilized, everything is the right way, it will blossom. If it's not, it's just going to rot and destroy. What we're seeing in front of us is rotting and destroying, because we're not giving the fertilizer, we're not giving what's necessary for it to grow. But if it could grow, let it grow. Give it some light, give it some sun, give it some water, give it the right dirt. Help the blossom to grow what's rotting. And what it needs to grow are the following 4 ingredients. 4 ingredients, like a plant needs 4 ingredients. What it needs to grow is first recognition of who they are. And when it comes to African Americans, the who they are have culture. Stop canceling it. That's the message God is sending in the world. Stop canceling the culture of African Americans. They're not just pigment. They have a history to them, which the American people, not us to judge, they did something that we know now to be absolutely evil, maybe even worse than everything done to the Jewish people, because with it all, you know how we survive? How do the Jewish people survive? Because we're the Jewish people. Whatever you do to me, I'm still part of the Jewish people. You can't take that away from me. My friends, we took it away from the African Americans. We took away from them their identity. We took away from their entire culture. We destroyed it. We made it as if you were animals, as if it's all nothing. It wasn't nothing. They have beautiful culture behind them, beautiful civilization, and it's what makes them who they are. Of course, they add to it, like you said, 100%. So the first level is recognition. We're never going to heal from the pain. We'll never start the growing process until we have the recognition of what happened to feel their pain, as I'm feeling now. Severe pain for total destruction of my entire past. Imagine it would be blotted out of my memory that I'm even Jewish. That would be a real destruction of my entire being. I'd still be a nice guy. I'd probably still smile. But imagine I would totally be unaware that I'm even Jewish. Like, what am I all about now? I'm just the guy. That's what we're doing to African Americans. We're saying they're just a bunch of pigments. No, they're not. They have a history to them. They come from somewhere that we're not recognizing. Every nation of the world, we spoke about this with the 3 sons of Noah, 3 categories. It's also by the Tower of Babylon, the 70 nations with the 70 different ways of speaking. So the African Americans don't even have it anymore. They have maybe their own way of speaking, different expressions, like people in New York speak different than California. They have different ways of speaking. Everyone has different ways of speaking. That's not racist. That's part of who you are. But there's much more. We took away from them their language, their culture, their civilization. We have to be empathetic to that. We have to feel that pain, acknowledge it, and recognize who they are. Who they are means all the zeros behind it that we destroyed, and that digit, as you said, in front of it. Who is the individual? Who is the specific person? They have greatness themselves, but there's a lot of zeros there that we're cutting off. All Americans are cutting it off. That's what they're screaming at us in the world. Like, I've seen so many white Americans just baffled. Well, where's the racism? We're trying to find cases today where there's racism. Look over there, there's racism. I'm going to tell you where the racism is. The racism is that white Americans are looking at black Americans like pigment. No past. They're cutting off the zeros. I'm Italian. I'm Irish. I'm Spanish. I'm Mexican. You're black. No, that's racism. That's putting them on a lower level as if they don't have a history. So we have to acknowledge what was done to them. One of the greatest travesties, the most painful things, which I relate to from being the black sheep. I relate to not having the history. That was my point before. I know that pain personally of being part of a family where everybody's got this really great history and I'm a blank. And I really felt when I'm at the table with all these other, each one with their great history, and I'm the guy, everyone looked at me differently. I'm different. I'm the guy who doesn't have a history. And that's the pain. It really hurt. It really, really hurt for years. Every time we're by the table, I felt I'm less than. And that's whatever rights you give, you'll be by the table with the white Americans, you'll be in Congress, you'll be the president. Doesn't matter. They're still thought of as less than. You know why? Because we canceled their culture. We totally obliterated it, and we're not even acknowledging it. We need to recognize they come from a history which has beauty to it. Step number 2 is appreciating it, right? You have to know what it is and see good in it. Appreciating, wow, there's so many, the past and who they are specifically, different groups specifically, individuals specifically, 100%. We have a lot of work to do, my friends. Step number 3 is admire it. Say, wow, that's amazing, and speak about it, how incredible it is. People gave me different examples. Look what these African Americans did. It is wonderful. But it has to be with the zeros before, and we need to know more about them. And I urge all African Americans, please connect yourself to your culture and talk to us. And every white, every non-African American should recognize, I'm not saying we're guilty. We're not guilty. We're not evil. You and I are not racist. We're not evil. But we need to recognize the pain that they're going through. They went through unimaginable pain, not just being a slave and being tortured and being controlled, being totally destroying their culture. And that's why they're lashing out with that. Let's destroy this evil white culture. They don't even know what they're saying. It's coming from pain. Let's be empathetic, recognize their pain, feel love towards every human being, which comes from knowing who they are, appreciating, admiring, and here's the best one, emulating. I want to be like you. Show me how to do that. I also want to be like you. What you do is amazing, and in certain parts of my life, like I said in last week's lesson, how I learned from that father how to be a wonderful father to a child. We have to recognize. Apparently, that was actually one of the things that was said in my post about African Americans, about the lovingness that's within the family unit. You saw that also in Roots. Something very, very beautiful, how much expressed children to the parents, the right feelings towards it, very much missing in American culture. I'm sure America had a tremendous influence on African Americans, but in the roots of African Americans was like that wonderful man in Seattle, total love for the children, kissing them every day, hugging every day. We need to learn, we need to emulate. That's the highest respect you give a person. I know your pain, I recognize your greatness, I appreciate it, I admire it, and I emulate. I want to be like that. When a person feels that, it's like, wow. So then there won't be any such hatred. The hatred, because we are still racist. We are still putting them down. How so? We're cutting off their zeros. Do you get it? We're canceling their culture.
Rabbi, can I just, throw something out there? Because, I mean, the UN recognizes 195 countries that no longer exist. They just don't exist anymore. And we have even saw in ancient history, like even Mesopotamia is listed on this list. They no longer exist, but you had Sumerians before that disappeared. Maybe you became, the Babylonians, and so on and so on and so on. But things change, things transform. When you think of Africa, I mean, I've got a good friend of mine that's from Ghana. Okay, he came to university in Canada. We became friends, anyways. He shared a lot about his hometown and how the roots and the history behind his hometown was a port where the slaves were actually picked up. And there were people, though, that were black people that were capturing other tribes and selling them. It was just a port where they were being sold from in Africa alone. I mean, to say it was just the Americans, we know that.
No, Dan, I don't mean anything about Americans. Okay. I'm not talking about blame or guilt now. I'm talking about empathy for what they went through. Now, what you raised about history of all different countries is a really important point, because even though, as I said, God revealed himself through history, so one could just spend the next parts of his life studying all different cultures and history that came and went. And I'm not saying not to do that, but I don't think it's so productive. It's exactly the same as God revealing himself in the world. So one could study all the different kinds of cockroaches. I'm sure you can learn about God by doing that. I don't think you should spend your time doing that. There are other things you could spend your time. I mean, look at the deer and look at the lion, the things that we're taught to learn from the kitties. You can learn from different things.
Consider the ant.
You learn from the ant. So there's certainly also in Torah. Torah is humongous. So every single part of Torah is understanding God. So what should you study? I could just take something out. Leighton had a sister, name was Timna. I could just study that all day. I could just study in different names. But it has to be something, as all my lessons are pleasant and purposeful. It has to be something life-changing. So when we study history or the world or the Torah, it should always be prioritize things that are applicable to you in your life. It should be something that's how you can connect personally to God. So when we talk about the history of different nations, of course things came and went. I don't think we should be spending much time on that. But when we're connecting to an African American, we need to, white America as a whole, and on any individual relationship you need to recognize their history. I think there should be a public park about this. There should be some recognition of what we did to their culture. There was African culture, and whoever you're talking to, don't talk to them as if they're just American with pigment with no history. That's the most derisive, racist thing you could say to them, that they're just American. They're just American, nothing else. Well, if they are just American, nothing else, it's because, and I don't mean America did it, Dan, that's not my point. It's because their culture was destroyed by him or them or whoever. It doesn't matter. The fact is they've been destroyed. It doesn't matter who did it. They're in pain now. So you think it's going to help them to blame someone for their pain? If we knock down a statue, now they'll feel better? I still think of you as a good for nothing, but the guy who made you a good for nothing, I destroyed his statue. Feel better? It doesn't work. Nobody's going to feel better until, first of all, you have to acknowledge that they're in pain. Know what the source of their pain is and help them out of it. Let's try to understand what makes you, you. What makes you so beautiful? What makes you such a wonderful person? And then I can actually learn from you as well. Not just me teaching you and I'm greater than you. I'm going to let you come to my college. I'll let you be the president of my country. That's not what it's about. It's not about including. It's about recognizing that they're not less. We made them less than. By destroying their culture, by canceling their culture, we made them, not we. They were made less than. Forget the we. They were made less than. We need to recognize that. We need to have empathy for that. It was a destruction that the Jewish people have never had. We've never lost our identity. They did. To a large extent, African Americans have lost their identity. And that is a sacrilege, an abomination beyond any other pain.
Can I throw one more in here? Because, I live in British Columbia, Canada, and I'm on an area of land that a certain native tribe has never seceded. And so it's common practice up here to even thank them as a people for letting us even be, in their region. My friend Cole here in Washington State also asked, he'd love to hear your views on the destruction of the Native American culture.
It's the same thing, Dan. It's the same thing, and how wonderful it would be, how they would feel if we would first of all acknowledge that we didn't just take over the land. That's one thing. That's gone throughout history, people taking over each other's lands. But the recognition that you've destroyed a culture, it's not enough to say, I give you voting rights. I have to treat an equal means that you have heritage like I do. I acknowledge that your way of life is also praiseworthy. Not just my way of life, my ancestors' way of life. And also, I'm telling you as a Noahite to the Christian religion, stop putting down the Christians and saying you're all going to hell, you're all worshiping a man, you're all good for nothing. Do you think that's what God wants you to do? How about recognizing some beauty in their way of life, as our Torah does? We don't, of course, they're doing some things wrong, but let's see the beauty for what they're doing that's right. They're doing some very wonderful things. They're in love with God. And maybe they're getting a wrong way about it, but there is some tremendous beauty that you can connect to, appreciate, and even emulate. That's what I did in my Jewish-Christian conflict resolution. We need to validate their way, not what they're doing. They're doing things that are wrong, but that doesn't define them as bad and evil, and we hate them. That's the racism, and it's through all of us. And really, let me just finish the lesson on a really positive note. Because I always take this personal. As a Jew, we take everything. It's all about the Middle East. It's all about Israel. It's not narcissistic, but God did choose the Jewish people to be the light to the world. If we're seeing darkness in the world, it's personal. It's always personal. It always has to do with the Jewish people. And my call to the Jewish people, anyone who's listening to this, is it's something that we are really responsible for doing as well. And it's within the Jewish people, you'll see this, a great majority of Jewish people today are secular. They're not following the guidelines of the Torah. A huge majority, I don't know, 90%, 80%, something really humongous. And it's something that we don't discuss a lot because it's unpleasant, but I'm going to discuss it. What have I got to lose after today's lesson?
Now, Rabbi.
We'll throw in one more wrench. The problem, the source of all the problem, the Jewish people, we have to set the example. How much we know that we're still in the exile because of this baseless hatred. You know what the hatred is? The racism going on within Judaism, you know what it is? It's in all directions. It's a total discomfort. And exactly this, to look down as a less than. I wish this message would get to the ultra-religious, because I know them inside out. I've been there many, many years. And the fact is, there's a total, it comes by definition. Whenever you're in the position of prestige, by definition, if you're not constantly working on your humility, you will look down at others that aren't at your level of prestige. If you're a teacher, you're a source of the light, you're the priest, you're the king, you're the president. You can't blame a president for being a little bit tawdy. He's the president. He's the king. If he's not constantly working in Judaism, the king has to work on his humility constantly. Moses, the greatest of all men, he was the humblest of all men. He had to work on it constantly. And a serious problem that's a source of darkness in the world and that we all need to work on is, like I like quoting from Jim Lang. I have it here. I said it this morning. It should be here. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. I don't know where I put it. Oh, here it is. Jim Lang, who used to be a Christian pastor, he writes in the preface to Let's Get Biblical, 2nd volume, and he's so right. With the help of this exhaustive work from Rabbi Singer, those Jews who have strayed from their God-given role can return, put on their holy garments, and prepare to teach the nations. What he's missing here is not just the nations. I'm telling you from inside the ultra-religious, we need to first teach the secular Jew. And the reason why this is not happening to a large extent is exactly the same as the hatred, the cancel culture of African Americans. What's happening is people are looking down at every other group as if my sect, my group, we got it right. We're the right ones. We're going to be saved. You will be destroyed with all the other evil people because you're not doing this and you're not doing that and you're not doing the other thing either. So you're all good for nothing. And we're defining whole groups of people as being a less than. Now, do you think you'll be able to shed light onto anybody if you're looking at them as a less than? And I'm talking even about secular Jews. Never mind, as you've probably experienced, you'll find many religious how they think about Noachites or how they think about Christians with such lowness and negativity, like I'm hot, and you feel that. And Noachites get all upset about it. Well, what makes you better than me? And it's really true. And this is the problem, this what we all need to work on. Everyone on your level, see the people in your life that you might not even know it, but you're looking down at people. Pretty much everyone in this world is looking down at somebody. Like, I'm greater than you are. It has to be. Or else you would never insult anybody. You would never talk down to anybody. You have to have the feeling on some level, I'm greater than you, that I can speak down to you. And that is the problem. God made this. God made a marriage to be a man and a woman. You know why? Because they're opposites. The only way to have success is to get out of yourself, see the other for who they are, recognize them, appreciate them, admire them, emulate them, then you'll come to a oneness. That's the way to become godly. It wasn't by accident that women came from a different planet than men. It's by purpose, because that's the only way for you to grow. It's not by accident God made the Democrats and the Republicans so diametrically opposed on a million things till they're coming to blows. It reminds me of a marriage. I went through this also. A little piece of advice for anyone who's been through a divorce or going through a divorce or is divorced. It's the same exact thing. It's not a cancel culture. You're not starting fresh and let's just forget about everything. I can honestly say,
clean slate.
I do love my ex-wife. We had really rough times and we had to get divorced. I told her before the divorce, and I'll tell her again now, what we did, it's not personal. I admire her as a human being. I learn a lot from her. She's the mother of my children. I put her on a big pedestal. We can't be married. That's no reason for there to be hatred between us. I mean, just think back to the marriage days. Just because we're divorced now, so there's hatred? I understand there was some bad stuff there. So now you're defining the entire person as the bad stuff? What happened to all the good stuff? Get kids together. What about that? What about the good times you had together? There's a reason you got married. What about that? That doesn't just, you don't cancel that. You have to move on. We can't continue together for whatever the reasons may be. But we don't cancel. We take out and we continue and we grow to a higher level. And that's why God made it. God made it that you should grow to a higher level. God made the two different political parties, man and woman. He made cases where you'll have to be divorced. It says it in Scripture. You'll have to get divorced. Does it say when you get divorced you should hate your wife and try to do damage to her and curse her and cut her off, could ruin her job? No, we should never, ever say anything negative, even when you're married and certainly when you're divorced. Because then the knee-jerk reaction, you're going to say hurtful things. Don't you ever say a hurtful thing. Especially if you have children, my goodness, how dare you? Think back to your bridal days, to the canopy. What happened to you? How could you speak that way? I understand they did hurtful things to each other. So take a step back from the things, and you could argue the issues, not the person. We argue the issues, not the person. The person is a wonderful person. Every policeman is a wonderful policeman. Maybe they had brutality. They have to work on that. It's a problem. But nobody is we don't define the person. That's the mistake. And the Jewish people, we are supposed to be shedding this light to the world. When we do this, it will spread. The light spreads. You know how much it spreads? You have a dark room, you light a little light. Boy, does it spread. 1,000 times more than the virus. It doesn't even help 30 feet and a face mask. You turn on the light, it's going to spread the whole room. And that's the light we're talking about, is seeing each other. So I'm telling the ultra-religious, to the secular Jew, secular soldier, every group, recognize who the other are, their heritage. I'm saying this now to every single Jew. I don't care how secular you want to call yourself. You're a Jew. You have heritage. Connect to that. We were in Europe before the Holocaust. It's true, it was destroyed. It's still our heritage. We go all the way back. Connect to your heritage. Whoever you are now, you can add to your heritage. How much you're adding? Some are adding more, some are adding less, but you got lots of zeros back there. Don't cut yourself off from your past. If we would just look at each other that way, we learned this actually from the book of Micah, you call it. Micah. One of the attributes of God is called Mimei Kedem. And what it means is you need to look at a person, how he was beforehand. Think of them before they did this bad thing that they did. How were they as a little child? Oh, such a sweetheart. Think of them back then. Your love for the person shouldn't be defined by a certain action that they did or are doing. So they're doing something bad, but see the beauty in the person. See the beauty in the group. This is going to be really hard. Even the group that you know are totally wrong. They're idolatry, or they're not keeping the guidelines of God, or they're doing terrible things over here. With their relationships, whatever it may be. So they're doing terrible things, okay, but can't you see them for human beings? They're in God's image. Can't you see the good in the person? As soon as we start doing that, that's the light, and that will spread, and the person will start feeling good about himself. And I guarantee you, when Black Lives Matters actually recognizes their Black life and how much it matters, they will not be a hate group. They won't. The hate is coming because they're not recognized. When they start feeling their own heritage, they'll look back to Kanta Kinta. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't knock down statues. He wouldn't act that. He was a beautiful guy. As the warrior told him, we don't want to kill. We want to save life. That's what they would do. But they're not getting it because they're not recognized. They're not loving themselves for who they are because nobody's recognizing them for who they are. That's what we need to do. This is the light that we need to share, everyone on your level, to anyone who is feeling themselves lower than you. Raise them up. Show them how you recognize their greatness. Appreciate them. Admire them and emulate them. Guaranteed that light will spread. They will all of a sudden be full of light too, and they'll spread it to the guy next to them, and the whole world will be a wonderful world. We'll have our salvation. That's my advice to get out of all this pain.
Well, Rabbi, this is a wonderful opportunity for Noahide to just understand that we can even provoke, especially the secular Jewish people, back to their culture, to their heritage. I mean,
exactly.
We're overjoyed that you're sharing the beauty and the pleasant, purposeful nature behind Torah. And it just excites us to see that, hey, there's a wholesomeness here. And you and I have chatted over and over, and, there's this, like, you've always talked about, the mind and the heart and the stomach and cognizant behavioral therapy.
Emotional, behavioral.
Right. But my point, that social psychologists have this phrase of out-group derogation. That's what they've coined it as, out-group derogation. And it's a maladaptive social psychological behavior. And there is a maladaptive element. And it is that maladaptive element of out-group derogation that is at the heart of all racism. Because, like you said today, it's not about the pigment. It's not about the pigment. I find when anybody so identifies positively with any group, all of a sudden, if you're not part of that group, you're a problem. And that's that maladaption to say there's a problem. It doesn't mean there's a problem. Maybe they don't know.
You're only that way.
Gets thrown out the window.
That whole maladaptive is only because you're feeling not recognized and appreciated for who you are. So then you're not part of our group. But if you would know that this other group actually looks up to you, and they've changed their life because of you. You know how powerful that is?
Huge.
The greatest compliment I ever get is when someone says, "Thank you, Rabbi, for your lesson. You've changed my life." You know how great feeling that is? So if we would actually, if African Americans would feel first of all, empathy for their pain and recognition for their heritage and their personal, communal and personal greatness, raise them up to that recognition of self-worth, they it's unbelievable what you'll do to them. The hate will just completely go away.
There's champions of any race, if you want to say, but I think what transcends race and into humanity is the light of Torah.
It's the light of Torah, and
wisdom,
it's godliness.
Wisdom.
It's exactly made. It's not a bad that we have to overcome. This is the purpose of life. God made it this way on purpose, so that we should get out of ourselves and start seeing others, seeing every single others, all the 70 nations of the world with all their different cultures, and learn and appreciate them. It's compared to an orchestra. You can't just say, "I'm going to stick with my the cello." Yeah, and that's enough. No, listen to their music. And theirs by itself is not enough either. You guys listen to my music. And together, we'll make an incredible world. But if we're all sticking to ourselves, then
Well,
we'll
Rabbi,
never do it. This is
maybe
so
you can help
important.
answer this. Maybe you can help answer this because I live up in Canada, and Canada has been like a super melting pot project, it seems. In the U.S., of course, it's always been the land of the free, home of the brave, and they've tried to be a melting pot. But Canada has gone ultra liberal in a lot of respects, and to the point where, if you've lived here for 100 years, your family, go back 100 years or more in Canada, it's almost like you don't belong to anybody or anything. I mean, you can go to beautiful cities like Toronto, Vancouver. You got Chinatown sections there. You've got, Greek town. You've got areas, a lot of Italians. You've got areas of all this sort of stuff, just like you down in the U.S. But there, like I say, 100 years later, it's forced melting pot in a lot of respects. We, would admire, like I would go to upstate New York and drive through certain small towns and you could see, when I was young, the flags would be out on the porch and people would be just, proud to be who they were. And it wasn't about anyone else. They were proud to be who they were and celebrate the unity that could be. And it just seemed to have an element that I think is lost with this conglomerate, melting pot. And I know that the Hebrew people have been chief for 2,000 years, abroad on the planet. And like you say, all over and sought and hunted and chased and persecuted. And yet they have not succumbed to any melting pot notions. They've kept that uniqueness.
Oh,
and
there
that
is.
distinction.
There is, Dan. We have melting pots
But
too.
some of us feel lost, in Canada. I mean, I know I've got Irish, British roots. I can track it back to Nordic Viking, and then I can track that back even further to Goth. And I believe I can track it back even to the time of Noah.
The concept of melting pot is spoken about at length in the Torah. It's in the Jewish people. It's in the nations of the world. It's a common thing. So the answer to your question, it's a really good question, Dan. The answer to your question is that we need to do both. And God runs this world. There's a reason why he made a melting pot for the people that are in the melting pot. But God runs the world. Our job is to become godly on our own, to recognize others' greatness, to recognize your own greatness and others. That does apply to your heritage. I'll give you a parable of how to do yourself with others from the Jewish people. We had 12 tribes. Each tribe had their own flag, and they had their own little community separate from the others. Did they look down at it? No, but we are absolutely different. We have our little group. In Judah, they were the kings, and in Levites, they had the priesthood over there, and in Yisachar, Shimon were the school teachers, and Yisachar were the Torah scholars. Each tribe had their speciality, their certain, what would you say, your like personality, who they were, different, but they were all one, they were all together. So there's a certain unity of a group, and there's each special community within the group. Now, when you have a melting pot, that's really God's gift to the world. You need to appreciate, I'm not saying you should make melting pots, but if you are in a melting pot, the way to look at everything in life is God is doing this for a reason. And you need to start, whoever's in that melting pot is like you're part of an orchestra where the instruments are mixed up. You need to start appreciating all these different instruments. I'll tell you, in Israel, I had this. I chose to live in an area in Israel which was segregated. It was built by the different political parties in Israel. And we could see the different groups within the Jewish people. And I would take my kids for a walk and show them each group, see the beauty in it. And I would point out the things that are more beautiful in our group. Not saying bad here, but you see how, because you need to appreciate who you are. Look how ours is more beautiful in this aspect, but look how theirs is more beautiful in this aspect. And the idea was to learn from each one. But there are many areas in Israel and in the world where everybody's all together. There's not segregated with different. Just imagine America would be divided into political parties. That would be something. That would be something. It might happen one day. The hatred going on. But if you are found in a melting pot, it's because God gives every person the exact curriculum for you. And apparently, you need to start learning about a whole bunch of different instruments. You need to learn to appreciate all different cultures. It doesn't mean they're all the same. And the goal will be when we all can connect to each other and learn from each other, all different attributes, because all 70, I'll tell you more. We spoke about the 3 sons of Noah. The 70 nations of the world this is going to blow your mind, are exactly paralleled to the 70 qualities of a person's personalities. Kochas HaNefesh. The Gra there's a whole book about this. There's 70 different powers of our soul, and each nation represents. So maybe we're not getting it, we're not focusing it, but if you'll just look at the nation, you'll find a tremendous beauty there. We have all of them. Each person has all of them, but some excel in certain aspects more than others, and we can learn from that. It's like a husband and wife. A husband could also do the things that the wife is doing. The wife could do the things the husband could very well be. But they have their personal jobs, however they worked out the family structure, and together they function. So it doesn't have to be one putting down the other. But in your role, you're the best you that you could be. And you can learn from the other a certain aspect that you're missing. That's the completion of a marriage, completion of any relationship. America will be successful if the government, in my humble opinion, part of any political party that wins should have the other president as part of the political party, as part of the advisory team.
Can I throw a curveball, Rabbi? Can I throw a little curveball? Because I find the younger generation today, Rabbi, they're always, the next generation, younger generation is always looking to do something different than the one before. They're looking to have that culture not canceled, but identified like you're talking about. But you have a lot of people with these lifestyle choices, cultural choices, and they don't want anybody telling them what they could or should or shouldn't be. Do we have to acknowledge that as well?
What you're talking about now, Dan, is specific to our generation. This is the generation referred to in our sages at the end of days, chutzpah yaska, where it's extreme chutzpah. Don't anyone tell me what to do. That's a relatively new thing. It used to be quite the opposite. Used to be both African Americans, but most countries, there was very clearly guidelines what to do, and the children didn't say, don't tell me what to do. We're okay with the guidelines what to do. It's our generation, and there's a reason for that too. There has to be a certain personal awakening now. So there should be that feeling of independence on my own, but it's a mistake to cut off. We need to add to the zeros. If you're separating from the zeros, my friend, by definition, you are now much less than everybody else. I wish everyone could get that. If you're going to try to cut off from your past, by definition, you've just cut off a lot of zeros. You are much less than anybody, even if they're acting at a lower level, but they're an Italian. Okay, not such a high level, but they come with all of Italy behind them. And you're totally nothing but a piece of pigment. Wasted protoplasm. So you could do your own stuff, but you're missing that whole backing of a community, of a civilization that should give you, it does give you, if you'll just connect to it. So it's as everything in life is a challenge for us to grow on a higher level from it. In our generation, that challenge to a high degree is this individuality. I want to be my own self. And you need to do that. You need to add another digit, but don't cut off the zeros. Be your own self.
And so the problem you see with this cutting off the digits is those that they let the mind go and they want to destroy history, wipe it all out as if it's going to start a blank chalkboard and we can start afresh. Yes. And we just know that never works. It just doesn't happen.
It ruins it. It will ruin your divorce. It will ruin your being a Noachite. It will ruin society because you're not growing. Growth means that what happened, and I'm now past that. I'm greater be from it. And you could take a lot of good. Usually, there is good in your past, even if the bulk of it was pretty bad. You'll find more than a silver lining. You'll find the whole cloud is actually pure silver. There's a lot of good in it.
So, Rabbi, a branch can never produce fruit without being attached to the trunk, right?
Good. There you go. Now you got to get the roots. To the roots, my friends. Try growing a fruit without roots. Good luck.
Yeah. I think I think that's a
Called a
clear
vegetable.
punch. Yeah. I just, I really, wish you could elaborate more on this, being buried in the ground and covered, in the darkness. You touched on something beautiful there that the world needs to grasp, that this is the order and way that Hashem has designed life, that it would go in the ground and die. And
I'll tell you why. Because the purpose of life in this world, as we say, nama de chisufa, we shouldn't have the bread of embarrassment. We need to earn it. So it has to come from a place where things look black. And on my own, I'm earning it. That's our whole life is about that. So the darkness we're seeing in front of us is telling us the light we need to get to. And we will get there as soon as we recognize each other's culture and bring that culture to the next level of admiration, then that will bring the light to the world. It's time to break my fast, Dan.
All right, Rabbi, you know what? This has been a beautiful class. I want to thank you. I know you've been churning through this long fast, but more than that, you're still shining light of Torah filled with joy, and it's always pleasant and it's always purposeful. I want to thank you, and I know that we've got people from Brazil watching tonight. We got people down in Lima, Peru, plus all across the United States and abroad. So,
do they have any culture in Brazil and Peru, or they just have different pigments?
They're unique. I find the Brazilian people wonderful. I was chatting with the one friend one time there in Peru. I said, that's a place I would love to visit. I think there's such ancient culture there. Some zeros well behind that go way back.
Exactly. So we need to learn from everybody. We are the world.
Good stuff, Rabbi. Okay, so till our next time, I know it's at your discretion, Rabbi. So, just know that we enjoy broadcasting with you. We enjoy, listening to that you share pleasant and purposeful Torah. It means a lot. People enjoy it. And so just be encouraged. And I thank you for your always compassionate Torah talk. It just means a lot. So, folks, until next time, this is Dan signing out with Rabbi Pinchas Levin in Wisconsin. Bye for now, folks.
Bye.